be back. On the chat. Hello, audible? Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next design pattern, next graph pattern that we have in store, and that is low coupling pattern. Let's try and understand what we mean by these two concepts, which is one is coupling and the other is cohesion, right? So first take a look at coupling and then we'll take a look at cohesion. In a good system, it is always recommended that you have low coupling and high cohesion, right? Let's understand what this low coupling pattern tells us. The problem that it tries to address is that support low dependency, low change impact, and increased reuse. The answer is go for low coupling. Understand first what do we mean by coupling. Coupling is a measure of how strongly one element is connected to the other element, right? Or how strongly one element has the knowledge of the other element. How strongly one element relies on the other element. Element, which could be a class, a subsystem, a module, or a system with low coupling, is not dependent on too many other elements. So the moment we say we lower the coupling, eventually cohesion becomes high. Coupling in a way defines rigidness, connectivity, dependence on a particular class or element on the other classes. The more boundedness is there, right, the more the connections class X has other classes in the system, its coupling becomes higher, right? As a result, elements with high coupling, which rely on many other classes, suffer from the following problems. What are these problems? First, local changes because of changes in related classes, right? So if my class is dependent with n number of classes, and if even one from those n changes, then I might be forced to change my class, right? Because I'm related to that class. The problem that a high coupling system might have is it is harder to understand in isolation, right? So it is harder to understand a particular class in what it is doing in isolation. It makes sense only when it operates with those n different classes. In isolation, what it is trying to do, it becomes harder to understand, right? Similarly, it is harder to reuse because it requires additional presence of the classes on which it is dependent, right? So reusability is heavily compromised in case of systems which have high coupling, because in order to reuse a class from one system and put it into another system, right, you would need that particular class which has high coupling is interconnected to say n number of classes, then you would be required to pick up those rest of the n classes also and bring it to this particular system. So reusability is heavily compromised in case of high coupling system. So it is very important that the coupling is maintained low. This is what this pattern tries to explain, that the system provides is that assign responsibility to a particular task, to a particular class to do a task so that the coupling remains low. Use this principle to evaluate if there are alternatives between which you have to choose. Choose a solution while giving a responsibility to a particular class so that the coupling remains low. Let's try and understand by what do we mean in case of language specific. So what do we mean by the concept of coupling, right? So in an abstract manner, we say that the coupling is connectedness or relatedness, right? But in at level of implementation, what do we mean by actually having a higher coupling, or what is actually coupling, right? Say for example, there is type X and type Y. These are the two classes that you have. So type X has an attribute that refers to type Y instance, right? Or type Y itself. So type X has an attribute of type Y. And type Y are two classes, and type X has an instance of type Y. That means it is connected, the two classes are connected to each other. Similarly, suppose type X and of type X invokes a method object of type Y. Right? Type X has an object or attribute of type Y, or it invokes a method of type Y. In a way, type X is interacting on it more to type Y. The more that this kind of interaction is there, the higher is the level of coupling that is being induced in the class, right? So in a way, message passing, method calling, attribute visibility, all these concepts, they increase the coupling of the system. And that is the reason, if you see the information expert pattern, it always says assign responsibility to a class to do the task which has the information to do that particular task, right? If that particular class, if you assign responsibility to do a task to a class which doesn't have information to do it, it will ask another class, get that information from that class to do that particular task, and in this manner there would be an increased interaction between the two classes, and this would increase coupling, right? So this interaction would increase the relatedness of the two classes and hence increase coupling, right? So each of these patterns, they are counterparts to each other. Information experts give an advice based on the idea that you must go for low coupling. Information expert do the task, and by this method you would actually land up using the coupling of the system, right? The other tips that also increase the coupling is that you might use an interface and the n number of classes which are implementing those interfaces, right? The interface effectively might not be required. That is the reason why we have said factory pattern is not applicable here. That unnecessarily you would be introducing a class which is a factory. Unnecessarily you would be introducing an abstract and an interface which each of your snake types would be required to implement, right? And unnecessary coupling between those interfaces and the classes that implement those interfaces, right? So effectively your implements relationship, your extends relationship, all of them act as elements which increase the coupling. Avoid these as far as possible. If they are not required, don't go for an interface implementation or making a superclass, right? We had snakes object, had ladders object. We don't need a common interface which they would implement, and we do not need a factory in this case, right? It would simply increase the coupling of the system. It would simply increase the number of classes which is actually not required. It would simply increase the relationship between the classes and connected between them. Question: how using methods from other classes will increase the coupling? Increase the coupling definitely, because you are invoking the method of another class. So there is an interaction, there is a service that you are using from another class, right? So for your class to isolate to operate in isolation, it will not be possible. It would be harder to be reused, that to reuse your class in a separate system, because it is making use of large number of methods of other classes to do particular tasks, right? So the more you invoke methods of other classes, you are increasing the interaction, and that is increasing the coupling of the system. Okay, I'll move ahead and before the example, let's go to the next pattern, which is cohesion, high cohesion, right? So as I told earlier, the idea is your design should have low coupling and high cohesion. Let's understand what is cohesion. What is the problem that this particular pattern tries to solve, and then we understand what is cohesion. The problem is how to keep objects focused, understandable, and manageable, and as a side effect, support low coupling. Right? So in fact, if you see here, low coupling is a side effect of high cohesion. Right? If you increase the cohesion of the system, automatically the coupling becomes slow. Let's understand what is cohesion. Cohesion or functional cohesion is a measure of how strongly related and focused the responsibilities of an element are. Element with highly related responsibility not do a tremendous amount of unrelated work has high cohesion, right? So it's a measure of how strongly related tasks your class is doing, strongly focused it is on its responsibilities. Right? So if a player class is only doing what a player class is supposed to do, if this class is only doing what a dice class is supposed to do, it is only doing what it is supposed to do. If it is doing that, it would be easy to pick that class and put it onto another board, another system, right? So it is the relatedness of the tasks that determine the cohesion of a particular class. And that is what we say, that it should have high cohesion. A class, a module, or a subsystem should focus on doing only related tasks. That's what the high cohesion pattern says. Assign responsibility to a class to do particular task so that the cohesion remains high, right? And use this to evaluate alternatives. So in case there is a tie between application of more than one pattern, use this particular pattern to solve the tie, right? Go for a solution that provides a solution which increases the cohesion of the system. Let's move ahead and take up the example that I have here. So that the side effects of having a class which has low cohesion, it is a class which does unrelated things. It suffers from the following problems. Is hard to understand, right? So if a class is doing number of tasks, it becomes really hard to understand what is the actual responsibility of this task. Right? If I'm doing X also, Y also, Z also, P also, K also, R also, then you are not sure what is the main responsibility of this particular class. It becomes hard to reuse as well as hard to maintain. Involved in so many tasks, you cannot plug it out and put it to another system. Right? It's hard to maintain. If doing n number of tasks, its cohesion its coupling will be high. Right? So n changes in related classes will affect this class. So it becomes really delicate and constantly affected by change. Right? So the drawbacks of having a class which has low cohesion. A few questions are coming up. Let me just pick up that. So it says, could we say that cohesion is single responsibility? Yes, it is the responsibility principle. Right? So high cohesion is the single responsibility principle. All these patterns and principles have been given by different researchers with different names and different wordings, but all of them lead us to the same solution, right? And in the next session, we would be picking up the solid principles. Last topic is left for us, and in the solid principles, the single responsibility principle is the first one that we would look at, and which says that the class must have high cohesion. It should be responsible for carrying out a single task, right? Okay, this is another question which says how to achieve high cohesion in controller class, right? So controller classes are an exceptional classes which do have high coupling, right? Because they are responsible for actually controlling all the various classes that are in the system, right? And we have in today, but I might not be able to cover the controller pattern, which is also one of the class pattern, right? But there are ways to increase the cohesion of the controller class, is that it does only what it is supposed to do, that it does only the controlling part, right? We can see that a controller is supposed to connect to a large number of classes, but still it can have high cohesion by not doing what it's supposed to do, but only invoking the other classes to do that particular task, right? And these are called blotted controllers, the controllers which actually do all the tasks by themselves and do not invoke other classes to do the tasks, right? So a high cohesion in terms of the controller class would be actually not doing the tasks themselves, but invoking the other classes to do the tasks, right? But controller class, you can say that are kind of an exceptional classes. They will have coupling with the other classes, but they can still have low cohesion by not doing all the tasks. Can still have high cohesion, but by not doing the task themselves. Right? They only do the controlling task and leave the rest of it to the other classes. I have made the point clear. So if there is time, we'll take up the controller pattern as well. Let's move ahead with the example of the cohesion pattern. So coming back to our snakes and ladders case study, the question is, who should be responsible for knowing the endpoints of a snake object? The answer to these questions are very easy. So who should be responsible for knowing the endpoints of a snake? Again, seeing a 50-50 answer, which I did not expect it. Who should be responsible for knowing the endpoints of a snake? High cohesion. Be responsible for knowing the endpoints of a snake. It will be the snake class itself. The boat is coming as the answer. Snake itself knows its endpoints. They are its attributes. The snake class itself knows where it is the starting what is the starting point of the snake and what is the ending point of the snake. Who wants the boat to know about it? Know the endpoints of the snake. The snake class itself, which knows the endpoints of itself. I would be able to pick up the snake class into another game. They remain as snake. It has start point and end point. Class itself to know about its endpoint. They are its attributes. Why should I create attributes of starting point and end point in the board class? No. Okay. Next question. Who should be responsible for knowing the color of the coin? Yes, the coin itself. Not here, please. The player, which colored coin I own? Which color will be there with the coin itself? Every instance of the coin will know its own color. Actually, the attributes of the coin itself. Coin knows its color. Do I want a third class to know its color? This question, let me just read it. It's okay. Not important, right? So should be okay. Let's move ahead. So I think this is what everybody has got. Who should be responsible for knowing the color of the coin? We know it's the coin itself. The question is, who would be responsible for knowing the number obtained when a dice is rolled? The question that I was saying, this person mentioned, instead of knowing, you say who should be responsible for storing the number obtained when a dice is rolled, right? So the reason why I did not write the word storing and I used the word knowing, because go back to my first slide, we said there are two kinds of responsibility: doing responsibility and knowing responsibility, right? And effectively, the knowing and storing, it could be used interchangeably here, right? So what you are saying storing is right, what I am saying knowing is right, but using the terminology knowing because of the reason, the initial stage where we said that there are two kinds of responsibilities: doing and knowing responsibilities, right? To my question, who should be responsible for knowing or storing the number obtained when a dice is rolled? And the answer is the dice itself, right? The dice will roll, it will generate a number, and it will return that number to whoever invoked the roll dice, right? So dice, if you see as a standalone concept, the moment you roll a dice, the dice shows you a number. That's the dice itself who will be responsible for knowing the number obtained when the dice is rolled, right? And by no mean here storing. Of course, my dice will have a number which would be generated based on a random number generator, which would generate a number between 1 to 6 and return to the invoking class. So it is the dice which is responsible for knowing the number obtained when a dice is rolled. Okay. One question which I had left earlier, so I'll just go back and take up that question, and that would be the last for the day. The question is, who should be responsible for checking if mouth of the snake has a value larger than the again, who should be responsible for checking if the mouth of the snake has a value larger than the tail of the snake? And this question does not correctly fall into the low coupling pattern, but you can answer this question by the four patterns using one of the four patterns that we have studied so far. Question is, who should be responsible checking mouth of the snake who should be responsible for checking if the mouth of the snake has a value larger than the tail? Let me see the answers. This chat moving very fast. Okay, there seems to be so reject all game owners and game controllers answers, right? The game owner, the game controller will definitely not be responsible to know if the mouth of the snake has a value larger than the tail, right? We would definitely have a tie between and this is what I can see in the chat as well. So, okay. Then the board are the two answers which have a tie. Who should be responsible for checking if the mouth of the snake has a value larger than the tail? one one solution, one answer which says that since board is responsible for creating instances of the snake, the board should be responsible for checking mouth of the snake has a value larger than the tail. Right? I go for it. It is in a way correct. Right? We can say that both should be responsible for checking if the mouth of the snake has a value larger than the tail. Right? So my board class, while invoking while creating the objects of the snake, first it checks where the start point and the end point values are correct, and then only it would invoke the constructor of the snake. This is one answer, right? One possible answer, because my board class is responsible for creating instances of snake object. So would say that two points now with it, a starting point and the ending point which have come, and it will check for creating that the point is larger than the ending point, but the mouth is larger than the tail. That goes for the board. Now, who are saying that snake should be responsible are seriously typing in the chat. They are also right. Cohesion. Right? So why should I make the board class do task or should do? Right? Take should itself be able to check. The pass to me are right or wrong. Okay. And the sense also. My snake should be able to check whether I've got a mouth value which is correct and a tail value which is correct. And if I'm able to do that, if this resists my reuse. So I'll be easily able to pick up that snake object and put it somewhere. Increase my cohesion, reduces my coupling. Very good. But implementation wise, how do do it? The starting point, the mouth and the tail value. Suppose I'll try to make it more clear. I have X and Y, right? Or instead of X and Y, let me say I have M, which is the mouth, and T, which is the tail. So I have values M and T. Right? M and T, I have to invoke, I have to instantiate a snake. So what I will do, I will say using the sense of Java. So I would say snake S1 new snake. Right? I will pass M, T to this. The issue is this will instantiate an object of snake will if M and T are incorrect. The mouth and the tail values are incorrect. This will still instantiate an object of M and T. My board class should initially check F4 and then pass it instantiate object of snake. This question, right? Increasing it's decreasing the cohesion of the snake object, increasing the coupling, but you cannot instantiate with. There could another way is that you have a static method in the snake object in the snake class, which you first invoke passing M and T to it and find out whether they are valid. The question which is coming in the chat is that we cannot put condition in snake class itself. M should be greater than T. How will you do that? We want to do that. But we cannot do it. We can do it because if we instantiate an object, then that object is created with invalid values of M and T. The object of snake with invalid values of M and T. We've passed it invalid values. In the constructor itself and throw an exception if it is invalid. That's one possibility. Actually, unable to read chat. So many messages are coming. Okay, one that has come up. I'll let. That another solution which has come up, it says that snake can check the values and need not create a snake instance. In that way, any class can create a snake. Right? That is issue. That snake itself should be able to check whether values passed to it are right or wrong. Right? So one way is that instead of instantiating snake like this, we have a non-parameterized constructor for snake. That is option. So as we create snake object like this, and then we use the setter and the getter methods, to set the starting point. So we would say so we object of S1 and we say S1 dot set string point. That way M. We have set the starting point and then we say S dot ending point, and this is my tail. Right? The setter methods would in turn check the ending point is smaller than the starting point or not. In that case, I will not use a parameterized constructor. Right? And this is a good solution if you go for hashing. Right? So this particular solution would definitely increase the cohesion of the snake class. The snake class itself would be checking whether my starting points and ending points are correctly placed or not. And with this kind of a solution, you would be easily able to pick up the snake object and put it anywhere else. This will check the starting point and the ending point are matching with each other or not. One more question which has come up, I think you people will not be able to see it. A question, it says, why implementing multiple snakes if two snakes overlap? Right? Class by itself cannot maintain multiple starting and ending points of all the snake instances. Right? So what if the user enter values for the snakes and that leads to an overlap of the snakes? So two snakes have the same starting and ending point. That's a question. I think you should use use all the patterns that you have used to find out how this should be done. I leave it open to you how one needs to find out that the two snakes are not overlapping. Okay, that's a good discussion that is going on. I need a few more comments. Okay, so this one says it may not be a good idea for the snake class to self-validate itself. Be the responsibility of the board class. In it's actually it's a one-to-one solution that you can give. So in a way, if you can implement a snake object to check itself, increase the cohesion, right? Snake object, if it's anywhere else, will always maintain the kind of rule you want the snake to maintain, right? The mouth should always be larger than the tail, right? But you do not put rule inside the snake object and you put it somewhere else, then it is completely dependent on the other class which instantiates the snake objects to make sure that the snake is what we want it to be, right? So then its couplings, the snake is not actually doing what it should do, right? So I think most of the other questions that are coming up are almost the same. So the question that has come up, which I had posted, which one of you has posted about the duplicacy of snakes, is that at the time of creation, a board class would have to be responsible for checking if no two snakes have the same mouth, and of course same would hold true, same kind of a pattern you'll have to check for the duplicity of the ladders as well. So this was one tricky question, good question. So I think that's it for today. End up now. Cover 9 of the patterns today, but I've covered only 4 of them. But anyways, it was, I think, active class as far as it could have been. We'll wind up here. I will post the slides of the lecture, today's lecture, and I know that the previous lecture slides are also pending, so I'll post those also, right? And the announcement for the quiz 2 and assignment phase 2 is also up. Please do submit the same. And for the assignment section phase 1, I'm still in the process of collating the assignments. I am so far at set 3. Once I'm done, I will upload the details of all the sets. You would find a lot of shuffling between the groups because as it is, you have shuffled the groups. I'm capturing all the new groups that have been formed as well as adding the topic details that you have put in. And once all that is up, request you to check them and let me know in any discrepancy. There are a few cases where there is error in the submission as well. I will upload those cases as well. The files are corrupt, and those cases I will upload the details, and you will be asked to resubmit. And of course, that will happen either with the phase 2, or I would request you to email the same to me, but that will only be for the cases which have errors in the files, right? So some of the files had viruses and I'm unable to open those files. So I will put an announcement of them, and not an announcement, I would make sure that I would send out personal emails to those students who have error in submissions. That this would take time. Please enjoy your Diwali, and post Diwali we think up on this status of phase 1, and you can go up with phase 2. I think that's it for now. Thank you, and happy Diwali to all of you.